Hello everyone, and welcome back to History of the Ancient World. Today, we're journeying back in time, over 6,000 years ago, to the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This region, known as Mesopotamia, was home to one of the earliest known civilizations on Earth, the Sumerians. What was daily life like for these ancient people who laid the groundwork for so much of human history? Let's find out. The Sumerian civilization wasn't a single unified empire, but a collection of independent city-states like Uruk, Ur, and Eridu. Imagine bustling cities with massive walls made of sun-dried mud bricks. At the heart of each city stood a ziggurat, a towering stepped pyramid that served as a temple to the city's patron god. This wasn't just a place of worship. It was the religious, economic, and administrative center of the entire community. Priests and priestesses were incredibly powerful figures, believed to be the direct intermediaries between the gods and the people. They managed the city's resources, collected taxes in the form of grain and livestock, and organized large-scale labor projects like building canals and temples. So, who were the everyday Sumerians? Most people were farmers. Life revolved around the agricultural cycle. They were masters of irrigation, digging complex networks of canals to channel water from the rivers to their fields. This innovation turned the arid land into a breadbasket, allowing them to grow abundant crops of barley, wheat, dates, and vegetables. They also raised livestock, including sheep, goats, and cattle. The harvest was a community effort, and the surplus grain was stored in temple granaries, providing a safety net against famine. This agricultural success was the very foundation upon which their entire civilization was built. Beyond the farm, Sumerian society was highly structured. At the top were the king, or lugal, and the priestly class. Below them were scribes, who were among the most respected professionals. Why? Because the Sumerians invented one of the most transformative technologies in human history, writing. Their script, known as cuneiform, started as simple pictures, but evolved into a complex system of wedge-shaped marks pressed into wet clay tablets with a reed stylus. Scribes spent years in special schools, called adubas, learning hundreds of signs. They recorded everything: laws, religious texts, business transactions, and even epic poems like the famous Epic of Gilgamesh. Thanks to the durability of these clay tablets, we have an incredible window into their world. Next in the social hierarchy were the artisans and merchants. Sumerian craftsmen were incredibly skilled. They created beautiful pottery, intricate jewelry from gold and lapis lazuli, and powerful bronze weapons. Lacking many natural resources like wood, stone, and metal, the Sumerians became expert traders. They established vast trade networks, with their merchants traveling by donkey caravan or sailing reed boats up and down the rivers and into the Persian Gulf. They traded their surplus grain and finished goods for essential raw materials, connecting Mesopotamia to distant lands like Egypt and the Indus Valley. The majority of the population, however, were common laborers and farmers. They lived in simple, one-story houses made of mud brick, often clustered together along narrow, winding streets. A typical home might have a few rooms arranged around an open courtyard, which provided light and air. Furniture was sparse, maybe some reed mats for sleeping, a low table, and some clay pots for cooking and storage. Their diet was simple but nutritious, consisting mainly of barley bread, beer, onions, and fish from the rivers. Beer was a staple for everyone, from the king to the commoner. It was thick, nutritious, and safer to drink than water, which could be contaminated. Family was the cornerstone of Sumerian society. Marriages were typically arranged by the parents, and a formal contract was drawn up on a clay tablet, detailing the bride price and dowry. Women's roles were primarily domestic, focused on managing the household and raising children. However, they weren't without rights. Women could own property, run businesses, and even act as priestesses. We have records of female brewers, tavern keepers, and textile manufacturers. Children were expected to help with chores from a young age and follow in their parents' footsteps. Boys from wealthy families might be sent to scribe school, while most others learned their father's trade. Of course, life wasn't all work. The Sumerians had a rich cultural and spiritual life. They were polytheistic, meaning they worshipped many gods and goddesses who controlled the forces of nature, like Enlil, the god of wind and storms, and Inanna, the goddess of love and war. They believed humans were created to serve the gods and that their fortunes depended on keeping these powerful deities happy through offerings and elaborate rituals. They also had a rather gloomy view of the afterlife, picturing it as a shadowy, dusty place from which there was no return. Despite this, they enjoyed earthly pleasures. Music was important, played on instruments like lyres, harps, and drums during religious ceremonies and feasts. They played board games like the famous Royal Game of Ur, a beautifully crafted game discovered in the royal tombs, and they told stories. The Epic of Gilgamesh, perhaps the world's first great work of literature, tells the story of a legendary king's quest for immortality. It explores timeless themes of friendship, loss, and the human condition, showing us that in many ways these ancient people were not so different from us. The Sumerians were true innovators. Besides writing and irrigation, they developed the wheel, not for transport at first, but for pottery. They created the plow to make farming more efficient. They developed a system of mathematics based on the number 60, which is why we still have 60 seconds in a minute and 360 degrees in a circle. They were the first known astronomers, charting the stars and planets and creating the zodiac. Their legal codes, like the code of Ur-Nammu, predated the famous Code of Hammurabi and established principles of justice and punishment. The legacy of Sumer is all around us, woven into the fabric of our modern world. Their inventions and ideas were passed down through successive Mesopotamian empires like the Akkadians and Babylonians, and eventually influenced the Greeks, Romans, and our own civilization. From the way we measure time to the stories we tell, the echoes of this ancient culture can still be heard. They were the original pioneers of urban living, the first to record their thoughts, and the first to build a complex society on a grand scale. So the next time you check the time or look up at the stars, remember the Sumerians, the people who started it all. Thanks for joining us on this journey to ancient Sumer. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to History of the Ancient World for more deep dives into our shared past. Let us know in the comments which ancient civilization you'd like to see us cover next. Until then, keep exploring.